Sam or Principal Amy, do we have somebody providing translation on the call?
They're supposed to be, but I don't see anyone. And nobody came in person, right?
Not yet.
No, we're the
Okay.
only ones in the room.
I'll check in with Gabby.
Okay,
Oh, wait.
thank you.
I should do this.
Javier, I haven't heard back from her yet.
Elisa Wardick, community rep.
Matthew Kwame, parent rep.
Bill Kennedy, parent rep.
Sherry Valentine, teacher rep. Sandy Clark, non-teacher rep. Claire Trevisi, parent rep. Aisha Noble, parent rep.
Javier Seawright, parent rep.
Lori Zamey, principal, attending virtual, impacted by COVID.
And I just want to acknowledge that we have 8 members of the LSC present in person, and that's a quorum. Is there a motion to approve the order of the agenda?
A second.
Okay, all those in favor of approving the order of the agenda?
Aye.
All those opposed? Abstaining, now voting, motion passes. The next item on the agenda is the student council report. Principal Zamey, is there a student council representative?
There's supposed to be one. I don't see anyone virtually. I'm not sure if anyone's in person. No. Okay, I'll check in with Ms. Kirkstra. She had sent me the name of a student that was supposed to attend. I'm not sure if you're speaking, but if you are, you're on mute.
Okay.
Hey, Lori and or Sam, it sounds like we have some people that are trying to log in virtually and are not able to. Can we check into that, please?
I don't see anybody in the waiting room.
Okay.
I'll watch my mouth.
Hey, Lori, you said timed out trying to join.
I couldn't hear you. What was that?
It said time out, trying to join is the message that they received.
Maybe try to rejoin.
Mr. Lee says he's checking on his end.
Good.
I think we want to give it 1 minute and then move on. The meeting is in person, so OMA is satisfied by us being here in person. The Zoom meeting and the stream is a courtesy to anyone who can attend, and we can't provide IP for them, as difficult as that is. Mr. Lee says he doesn't see anything on his end from the settings, so it might be a personal issue with whoever is trying to connect. So the next item on the agenda is the Items needing council approval, the minutes of the regular meeting of October 21st, 2021. Is there any discussion on the minutes of the October 21st meeting? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes for the October 21st meeting?
Make a motion to approve those minutes.
Okay. Any second?
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor of the minutes for the meeting of October 21st, 2021? All those opposed? Abstaining, not voting? Okay, the next item on meeting approval is minutes of the regular meeting on November 18th, 2021. Is there any discussion on the minutes of November 18th, 2021? Seeing no sentiment for discussion, is there a motion to approve the minutes? Bill makes a motion to approve.
I'll
Matthew
second.
seconds. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Oh, wait, what? Okay, minutes, those minutes are approved. The next item on the agenda is the principal's report by Principal Zamy, and I will go ahead and mute us here for that.
All right. Good evening, everybody. This is our second meeting this week. It's been a while since we've had a traditional principals report. There have been a couple of meetings that happened over the last couple of months with Dr. Fisher, and then I led the State of the School presentation in December, which gave a overview of some school-wide data. And then this past Tuesday, the LSC had a special meeting that focused on the health and safety protocols as it relates to COVID. So tonight, I'm not going to get into a lot of detail around health and safety protocols because we spent a lot of time on that on Tuesday. But if there are additional questions this evening, I'm happy to answer them to the best of my ability. But I did want to take an opportunity to give a progress update on our CIWP. The CIWP was written almost 2 years ago, and we are in year 2 of implementation and there were 3 focus areas. One was a complete review of our IB units of study with a focus on cultural relevance and creating a culturally responsive curriculum. And the other 2 were related to formative assessment and differentiation. And as part of our first priority area, at this point, we have 90% of our IB units revised and rewritten. We completed the review process and teachers have gone through a revision and rewriting phase. That doesn't mean that our units are complete. We still have opportunity to reflect and continue to revise them. Units should never be 100% complete, but we've made significant progress as we're moving towards our IB evaluation that is coming up. So the second 2 priority areas related to formative assessment and differentiation sort of took a halt as a result of COVID and all of the changes that we've experienced within education. And so the goal was for the second half of the year to come up with an action plan that we felt would be reasonable to begin focusing on both of those priority areas because they are essential in terms of our movement of students from an academic angle. And in order to do that, I met with the PPLC in December and in November, and we looked at what could be that process to really get feedback from teams before we move forward. So I met with teachers last week to just first check in on how they were doing after the work stoppage, but then to also hear from them, what do they think would be helpful to focus on from now until the end of the school year, given the limited amount of time we have remaining in grade levels. And what we're moving towards is a plan that would be sort of differentiated in and of itself for each grade level. So each grade level has varying degrees of needs as it relates to both priority areas. And so we want to make sure that the time is useful and meaningful, but that it's also differentiated to meet teachers' needs. So I'm in the process of finalizing that plan to share with the PPLC and begin moving so that teachers feel that they've got the support that is aligned to where they're at, especially given everything with COVID. And we're also taking into consideration that we need to do more with understanding the STAR 360 data that we currently have, while also thinking about how we can use that data to support small group and targeted instruction. Dr. Fisher had met with our staff on our November 5th PD Day, and she was able to lead, along with a colleague of hers, a session around conscious leadership for equity, and began work with the conscious raising process. She also met with our staff during the December 1st Flex PD Day and focused on leading for equity, looking at what she calls as KPIs, so key performance indicators, and encouraging staff to set goals on things that they have learned about and that they really want to be intentional in reflecting on. There was also follow-up in grade levels, in one grade level meeting, either the week of the 6th or the 13th, depending on the grade level, where there was further focus around avoiding conscious roadblocks in our work with leading for equity. Dr. Fisher has met with the school leadership team. That's myself and approximately 15 other staff members who are teacher leaders within the building. And we met on October 28th and December 16th. And we also began looking at some of the data that came from our staff survey that we're in the process of moving towards sharing that data back with the whole staff along with the community at large. And we want to make sure that we've got an action plan that we can share in terms of where we're at and where we want to go. And she's going to continue meeting with our leadership team, focusing more on like equity purpose to practice. So that's that action planning process. We were supposed to meet with her during grade levels next week this week and next week, but we put a pause on it because of the work stoppage and where everything was at. And so we're in the process of rescheduling those meetings. And then she's also rescheduling a meeting with myself and the leadership team for a January meeting. There's a couple of data points that I wanted to look at as a council. My voice, my school being one of them, student discipline, OnTrack, and then disaggregated IEP data. Some of this data may be duplicative from the state of the school presentation, and some of it may be new for those that are here. So the first one is the My Voice, My School data, which is an assessment that comes, this rating comes from feedback from students and from staff. And when I came into the school was at an organized, what's considered organized rating. And the goal has always been to get to well organized, which is the highest rating on the My Voice, My School scale. And finally, for the first year, actually during the pandemic, we had achieved well organized as our overall rating. But within that, we did see a decline in collaborative teachers. And I think we sort of expect that as a result of the pandemic and the type of work that teachers were able to do remotely. It's not the same as being able to pop into teachers' classrooms and quickly collaborate. And so, and even this year, while there's like greater opportunity to engage collaboratively, there's still not the type of collaboration that we'd like to see, considering the place that we were moving to pre-COVID. Pre-COVID, we were doing a lot of work with lesson study, peer observations, collaborative planning among grade levels and across grade levels. And so that's been an area that we've noticed has declined. And so this is something that we will continue to think about as I'm thinking about school climate and culture. And the next round of surveys will go out, I believe mid-February is when teachers and students will be able to give feedback on how they're feeling. The next data point, we looked at Aisha, Matthew, myself, and Shelton. We meet monthly within the safety committee. And one of the questions that we've had is, what does our student discipline data look like when we're looking at it broken down by race, by gender, by IEP, by EL? And one of the things that we are very conscious about and want to make much better progress towards is looking, our data should mirror to some extent our student population. And what we see here is we have an over referral of African-American students and Hispanic students compared to white and Asian students. And the demographics don't mirror what our student population look like. And it's something we're very conscious of. And it's something that we're constantly like asking, why does our data look like this? Why are we seeing this over referral of students of color in the disciplinary process? And it's something that we're tracking. So what we did not have prior was this type of data. So this information is collected from an internal tracker that staff members report to, and it pings Shelton and I. And then there's some type of follow-up that happens from Shelton generally. Sometimes it's another school administrator. And then some incidences are then entered into Aspen, and some are left as an internal like restorative process that is not escalated towards district-wide discipline. And then some things are escalated into the Aspen system, but are also not, there's no like punitive measure of discipline that's been put in place. And so we utilize a restorative model. We believe in repairing harm where harm is needed to be repaired. And we want to create a safe and supportive environment for our students. And so we recognize that we have disproportionate data, and through our work with staff members, through sharing this data, through our work with racial equity, the goal is that we see relationships between staff members and students change, and students, so that the type of referrals we get don't overemphasize one racial group over another. When looking at our discipline data disaggregated by IEP and EL status, we see that we actually have quite a few students who have an IEP who are also being referred through the discipline process. And so this also sort of causes concern from the administrative angle, because students with IEPs have very tailored plans that have been created. And the question we have to ask ourselves is the incident that's happening, is that a manifestation of the student disability or not? And then how do we really look at what support we have written into the IEP and continue to revise that IEP so that that student's plan is supported? So because of this, because of the large number of referrals coming from students with IEPs, that's the one area that we feel we need to focus even more intentionally on. When we're looking at like whole school shifts. And then the percentage of English language learners is actually lower than our EL population overall. So we're not seeing a disproportionate referral process when looking at English language learners, but we are seeing it among students with IEPs. Sorry. Data point that we have in our school improvement plan that we've been focusing on, which I'm not exactly sure, given the number of quarantines we have and the decrease in attendance, I'm not sure how realistic our OnTrack goals are, but I do want to emphasize that pandemic started in 2020, and at the end of 2020, 52% of our students were considered on track. School year 22, we're at 73% of our students on track. So I think this emphasizes the importance of in-person learning and students performing better, and teachers having more accurate data to work with when students are in person. When we look at OnTrack data disaggregated by students that are English language learners and students that have an IEP, we see students with an IEP at 54% school year 22, which is an increase from school year 20. And then we see students that are English language learners at 68% both metrics below the schools overall, but higher than they were in the previous 2 years. So those are two priority groups that we also dig into when we're having data conversations with staff members. This slide shows what our on-track rate looks like over time by racial demographic groups. And so we can see that as the years have increased during the pandemic, the number of students, again, in all demographics are increasing on track, but we still see a difference in on track among our Black and Hispanic students compared to white and Asian students. And then another data point that I wanted to emphasize is students with IEPs. So because a huge part of our CIWP is focused on students with IEPs and English language learners, it's important to look at what LRE levels students are placed in. And students, LRE levels is least restrictive environment. There are 3 different levels that students may fall in, and it depends on the percentage of time that students spend in the general education classroom versus being pulled to a separate setting. And what we've seen at Peirce is, the goal is that we have as much time in LRE 1 as possible to support our students. So 92% of our students in school year 22 are receiving almost the entire day, if not the entire day, in their general ed classroom, which is significantly higher than what we see in many schools. And this is as a result of our work with inclusion. And we believe that students perform better when they're learning alongside of their general ed peers. And so that's a shift of comparing school year 17 till now of 16%. So we have very few students being pulled to a separate setting. And so with that, even though our LRE levels are increasing, we still need to now focus further on specially designed instruction so that we're truly targeting the individual needs that students have in the classroom. So this just talks about where students are placed, and it sort of justifies or backs up our commitment to our work with inclusion. When we look at the percentage of students with IEPs by race, this slide has students that are what the district's percentages are compared to what Peirce's percentages are. And so the number of Hispanic students that have IEPs at Peirce compared to the district is very similar. So about 50% of our students with IEPs are Hispanic. That is also in alignment with our demographic data as a school. A little bit less than 50% of our students at the school are identify as Hispanic. And then at Peirce, 23% of our students with IEPs are white, compared to the district where about 8% of the students are white. And then at Peirce, about 15% of our students with IEPs are Black, whereas at the district level, approximately 40% of students with IEPs are Black. And so we've seen a reverse of what we see in the district within our own special education program, which is nice to see that the percent that we're not showing a disproportionate number of Black and Hispanic students with IEPs at Peirce. And that's also been something that we've been thinking a lot about, especially among our English language learners, because for a while we were over identifying English language learners to be recommended for an IEP versus supporting the language development. And this slide shows that at Peirce, 23% of students with IEPs are also English language learners, and the district average is 22% of students with IEPs are also English language learners. So some things that Mr. Lerner, along with our bilingual certified teachers and our bilingual advisory council, have been thinking about are how do we really think more about our work with native language instruction with our students to make sure that we are providing appropriate supports and not leading them down the road that would take them towards an IEP. We don't want to identify a language issue as a learning issue because they're two different things. And so by thinking a little bit more strategically about the type of support we're providing in the native language, we're seeing good progress from our students. In kindergarten is where we've started to focus that this year, and we hope to continue to scale that up over the next couple of years. We've also increased books that are available in the native language for students, and we're using the access test as another measure to monitor student progress in language development. While we don't think it's the best measure, it's a measure. And over the last couple of years, we've seen an increase in access scores. Access testing is actually about to begin. It was going to begin next week, and it may still, but it might be pushed back 1 week as a result of COVID. A few updates from the MYP program. The Peirce Send teachers continue to meet on a quarterly basis. Last month was a little bit tricky because of sub coverage, but we were able to make it happen. The MYP team is continuing with the learning celebration model, but having to revise it as a result of COVID and the health protocols that we need to follow. And then IB report cards will be shared at the end of the second quarter and then at the end of the year at Q4. There's an IB leadership team that's in place that is currently meeting on a monthly basis. There's PYP teachers and MYP teachers that are meeting separately, but then also together where that where the cross-program conversations need to happen. After school programs began since we last met officially in this type of forum. We have 41 different programs that are running, 314 unique students. This number may have shifted a little bit since this data was pulled. And there's a total of 656 total enrollment. So some students are enrolled in multiple programs. And then the winter sports season is underway with basketball. Spring sports will be starting up as well. And once we returned on January 3rd, we did put a temporary pause on programming that until this week, just because of the uptick in COVID cases. And we wanted to minimize crossing pods as much as possible. Shannon, did you want to give an update on attendance? I'm not sure if you're still around.
Yeah, I'm here. So it's been since October since we last did an all-school update on student attendance. As you can see, from October to January, we have lost 1.5%. However, with the COVID uptick and students being flipped to remote and then in their quarantine periods, an absence, even if it is excused, is still counted as an absence. However, if they are participating in virtual instruction, they are marked virtual present, so that does not affect it. However, with families self-quarantining and other things, we have seen a little bit of a decrease in our in-person attendance. If you follow down the line for Native American, it did drop. It is a small proportion of our population. So when a couple of students are absent in that population, it does affect it a little bit more heavily. For our Asian American students, it dropped about 2 percentage points. For Black students, it dropped about 3.5. Hispanic dropped about 2.5. Multiracial, almost 3. And for white students, a little less than 2. So looking at our subgroups that Ms. Amy had spoken about when we looked at our data for the school-wide, again, the all student attendance dropped a little less than 2, and students with IEPs dropped about 2.5. And then English language learners dropped less than 1 percentage point. So we do understand that these are areas that we need to keep an eye on and making sure that we are having our children present in school when they are able to and they're healthy and able to participate in person.
Sorry about that. Okay, thank you, Shannon. Shifting into staffing, there have been quite a few shifts in staffing, and actually I just realized there's one more I need to add on here. It's something that I semi-expected beginning of the year. I think I had shared this with the council that we had seen some staff members leave over the summer, and I expected that this year we would continue to see some attrition just because people are really rethinking where they're at within the teaching profession and what it is that they would like to do long-term. And I've been trying to have conversation with teachers to support them in a way that encourages them to stay, but also recognizes where they're at as individuals. And so around Thanksgiving, Miss Mauricio had resigned, and Miss Lovato, who had been a pre-K teacher assistant, has her teaching certificate and is bilingual and was very much interested in becoming a certified teacher at Peirce. So she was able to shift into that role. Ms. Munoz has been working alongside of her to support her with that transition. We also have Nora Hughes, who's a parent at Peirce, but also a teacher as well, who's stepped into Erin Lenahan's position while she's on leave. Erin will be returning middle of March. And then Julia is out on leave as well, and she'll be returning around May. And we're still waiting for Liliana Gutierrez to be cleared through the hiring process. But she would be a first-year teacher that we were able to find through the Golden Apple partnership. And so she'll be joining us. In the meantime, Miss Wynn, who's the special education teacher in pre-K, has been working with Miss Jing and Miss Tafoya to support that classroom. When Miss Lovato joined the second grade team, that opened a vacancy for the teacher assistant position, and Miss Crawford was hired to be a pre-K teacher assistant. She's actually in the process of becoming a certified teacher, and the district is allowing her to complete her student teaching while she's hired as a teacher assistant. So she's working with Miss Melman. And then we've had some new hires to our recess team. Stephanie Ortega, Asma, and Liv have all joined our team. And Mr. Vasquez, who's our 8th grade special education teacher, let me know that he's actually going to be leaving next Friday is his last day. So we are looking to find a replacement for him. And then Mr. Berta, who's one of our pre-K teachers, is currently on a leave of absence, and he's not sure if he'll be returning or not. And so Mr. Courtwright, who had been supporting intervention along with some special education caseloads, has shifted into that position. And we were able to rework schedules so that the kids that were on Mr. Courtwright's schedule also have appropriate supports. Some areas that I've engaged with the community over the last couple of months are through our LSC special meeting on Tuesday, where we looked at health and safety protocols. I held the state of the school presentation that looked at school-wide data, where we're at and where we're going. I continued with coffee with the principal. Kim Leibovitz continues with virtual school tours. Athanasia Cullen-Torres had supported a special education information session. Ms. Park has led sessions for families on the Go CPS process that focuses on that high school information session. And there have been shifts in the high school application process. And then Ms. Gimicello held sessions on Star 360 for families. A snapshot of our grade level meetings over the last couple of months have focused again on curriculum development. Week 10 data review. We'll do a week 20 data review next week. Working with Dr. Fisher, the Peirce meetings. I've been, I did that 1 week of check-in with staff. And then we're thinking about how to create more unscheduled time for teachers because they've got so much going on. And again, that speaks to like the differentiated plan for teams. What can they lead versus what do they need somebody else to support them in leading? Facing History continues to be a partner with Peirce. We have 2 administrators and 3 teachers from the MYP that are working with Heather Frazier. There are 6 meetings that our teachers are engaged in over the course of the year and very tailored professional development, along with support from Heather for us to think about ways that she can support us with professional learning around SEL with a lens on equity. And then here are some dates that are coming up. End of Q2 is next Thursday, no school next Friday. It is a professional development day for teachers. Our 8th graders will have their pictures taken very shortly. Report cards will be sent home. This quarter is not a report card pickup day, but it is report cards will go home, and then parents can always ask their teacher if they have questions about their child's progress. Friends of Peirce, the LSC meeting, and virtual coffee with the principal. The one thing that's not on here actually that I'm just realizing is the affordable housing workshop that members of the racial equity parent group are organizing. So I apologize for leaving that off of here. It was on my mind and then I forgot to add it in. But that is coming up. I don't have the exact date on my mind. So that concludes my principal's report.
Okay, just regarding the affordable housing, I think someone from REP will be updating the LSC on that later, so we'll get that update. Any discussion on the principal's report? I have a couple of questions myself, but I want to give other people a chance to ask questions first. Okay. My first question is on the CIWP for next year, Principal Amy. Looking at the current CIWP, we would have already started the CIWP process. Can you update the council on that?
The district has not released any guidance around CIWP, and I think it's because of so much that's been going on with COVID. So I'm not sure what guidance they're going to provide. Once I have that, I will share it back with the council along with, members of the staff. That is something that I'm thinking a lot about. How are we going to prepare for that? Because it seems like it might be a crunched process.
Yeah, that was going to be my follow-up question. So it might be a crunch process this year?
Possibly. I think that there's the potential to carry over some of what we had in the current CIWP to the next CIWP, just because the differentiation and formative assessment priority areas are important priority areas and really are relevant to the work that we need to really dig deeper into. But there's not a guarantee that those will become the priority areas.
Just so we have a frame of reference, do we have an idea of when we receive the guidance for the current CIWP?
It's depended on each cycle, to be honest. There have been some years where I've received it in October. There's some years that I received it in December. I don't recall receiving it like this late before.
Okay. And regarding attendance, I know that the upcoming year's budget is based on I think the 10th and the 20th attendance, but is there like the attendance throughout the year going down, does that impact the budget for next year?
No, not at all.
And do we know how that attendance, Peirce's attendance, measures up to the CPS attendance?
The CPS's attendance is around 88% right now, and we're at 93%. And I've also been looking at attendance for schools in our, within our area, and we're on par with where those schools are at.
Okay, on par with schools in our area.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question in reference to attendance. Ms. Amy, can you clarify, so students can attend remote and you want them present virtually. The students still counted present virtually even if there's not self-reported COVID, is that correct?
I couldn't hear the question.
So a student can attend virtually, correct?
Sure.
And even if they're not present virtually, even if they're not self-reported COVID, is that correct? If they're self-quarantining or what have you, so they're still marked present virtually.
They're only marked present virtually if they're under a CPS issued quarantine.
Okay, so if they're self-quarantining and they come on the screen virtually, they're not accounted for?
I guess I would need to understand what you mean by self-quarantine, because If they're self-quarantine, is it because they were a close contact, in which case that would be a CPS issued?
No, if they just are staying back because the numbers are high, or they feel that someone in the family doesn't feel well, or they've made this decision.
The district's guidance is that students should be in school. So they're not offering, they've told us that we are not offering remote learning for families that just want to choose to attend virtually. There are caveats to that. So if a classroom is flipped to remote, so if like 10 students in a classroom are flipped to remote, students that are in person can attend virtually and be counted attended virtually, and that's fine. They're not under a CPS issued quarantine, but they can attend virtually because the class is flipped and there's already hybrid teaching that's taking place.
Okay,
But
so-
if the class is attending in person, one student cannot just choose to attend virtually.
Okay, so, okay, thank you.
So Ms. Amy, just to kind of follow up on Jerry's question. Can you hear me okay?
It seemed like that sounded better.
No. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. To follow up on Jerry's question, so if the child is vaccinated in a class that flips, does that mean that the child's family has the option if they decide they want to go remote? And then I just want to make sure we're clear on that, because I know that's kind of been a debate, you know, whether a child is vaccinated or not, and if they can, in fact, do remote learning and have attendance counted.
That's correct. So if a class is flipped, a vaccinated student can attend in person or they can attend virtually.
No, I
Okay,
didn't know about that.
okay. Sorry, I'm unlocking my phone because I
Only when the class is split.
only when the class is flipped. Did you guys have more questions about the COVID stuff? I wanted to ask about, I apologize, I took notes on my phone. On the slide for the 3-8 OnTrack racial breakdown, I was curious, I know a few years ago, when you gave a State of the School presentation, the racial breakout, ELL students were making greater gains than Black students were at that time. And I wondered what that looked like if you noticed a pattern as it relates to ELL students and their progress on that particular slide, if you dug deeper into that.
Can you repeat the question, Aisha?
Yeah, on the slide, the OnTrack racial breakdown, I was curious what the data looked like for ELL students as a part of that, the breakout in that data, because as I recall a few years ago, when you pulled out that data, Black students were not seeing the same gains that ELL students were seeing, that there was a disparity. So I'm curious if you noticed the same kind of pattern reappearing when you look at the data as of today, if that pattern is, we're still seeing that trend.
So the data we're looking at, if I look at in the slide deck that I had emailed the council on slide 9, it has in 2020, which was the first year of the pandemic, 49% of our English language learners were on track. And currently 68% of our English language learners are considered to be on track. So that's a 19% increase as a result of the pandemic. If we look at Black students in school year 20, the percentage was 46% of students were on track, which is similar to 49% of our English language learners. And our Black students in school year 22 are at 53% of students on track. And our English language learners are at 68%. So we still see a discrepancy as of December with that data. So English language learners there's a higher percentage of students that are English language learners on track in December compared to end of the year, school year. 20. So it's difficult to say what end of the year data will look like, because the data is focused on, it's comparing end of the year to middle of the year right now.
Okay. Sorry, we're having some technical issues. Did other people have questions?
Just so
We'll wait.
the camera's still on us, but the TV is off. So.
But I also think that these are connected to the TV.
No, they're connected to my computer.
Oh, they are. Oh,
Yes. Sorry.
sorry. That's good.
Okay, I think we're working through the technical difficulties. Any other questions or discussions for Principal Amy?
Laura, I have a couple of questions. The OnTrack calculation, that has not changed, right? The way you determine students that are on track versus not, those percentages. There has been no changes in the way a student is labeled on track versus not on track, correct?
That's correct.
Cool. And then the other question is, you were showing a couple of pie charts where you were showing students with or students, the proportion of students that were English learners, and then students that were on IEPs, and then students that were neither. But then there's another slide where you're showing that there were 23% of English learners that were on IEPs. So I'm trying to understand that one pie chart that you were showing. I mean, are they mutually exclusive, or how are we? Because it just kind of adds up to 100, and so if there's some intersectionality between those parameters, IEP versus English learners.
Which data point are you referring to? I'm not sure.
So what it's a pie chart. The one that has a pie chart, there's two of them, blue and orange. That shows IEPs, ELLs versus none.
So that one is looking at discipline data. And so you're correct. There are English language learners that are also students with IEPs. And then there are students that just have IEPs that are not EL status. And so when Shelton pulled this data, he was pulling it based on how staff members identified that student. And so it was based on like the first designation. He wasn't able to pull the data where it would show where that overlap happened.
Okay. So presumably there's a little bit of a shift. We don't know which way. It could be more, it could be less.
Correct.
Okay, got it. Cool, thank you.
Any other questions or discussion?
I had one question.
Thank you.
In relation to that same slide with the IEP, the discipline with students with IEPs, is that number, you talked about that number being higher, more discipline referrals for students with IEPs than, I guess, in the general population. Is that number increasing, or is that has that been consistent?
This is the first data point that we've pulled, so we don't have a historical way of tracking it. So
Okay.
One of the things that we wanted to do this school year in particular and moving forward is to begin looking at what this data looks like over time so that we can have a point of reference to compare very discreetly to.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? Seeing no sentiment. Before moving on to the next sub item on the principal's report, I want to acknowledge that Spanish translation is available now for anybody that would need it. And I've noticed that Byron Adams has joined the Zoom meeting. Byron, can you confirm that that's you? Or Mr. Lee, can you work with him to change his name? Okay, the next sub item on the agenda is budget. Principal Amy?
There are no updates to the budget right now, and there are no transfer of funds. So I will move towards internal accounts. I had emailed out, and I apologize for the delay in getting November and December's internal accounts out. But I had also emailed, I believe it was September and October. And I know that it had been a while since we had an opportunity to approve internal accounts. And so I will start with making a motion to approve the September internal accounts.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, is there a second?
I'll second.
Bill seconds. I'll call the vote. All those in favor of approving the September internal accounts? All those opposed? Abstaining, not voting? That motion passes.
And then I will make a motion to approve October's internal accounts.
Any, Bill seconds, any discussion? Seeing none, Bill seconded. All those in favor? All those opposed? Abstaining? Not voting? Hello, Byron. Motion passes.
And then because of the short turnaround time with November, December, I'm okay waiting till next month's meeting to vote to approve unless people are okay with that right now. I guess I can make a motion, but I'm also fine with us holding off.
Okay, I will. Any opposition to voting on November, December at this meeting? There doesn't seem to be any sentiment to table it.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to approve November and December's internal accounts.
Any discussion? And Bill seconds again. All those in favor? Okay, abstaining, not voting, motion passes. Well, that was just for November, right?
Or in December.
Okay.
December too.
Oh,
I included both in that motion.
well, thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the safety committee update. Evan or Jerry?
So with the new.
Sorry, we'll move the microphone over closer to you.
So with the new agreement through the Chicago Teachers Union and Chicago Public Schools, it was recommended that the safety committee give an update to the local school council each month. So we've been meeting weekly. It's a team of 4 union members, SEIU 73 member, and then members of the admin team. And our main areas of focus have been school cleanliness and testing. As I'm sure you are aware, cleanliness still is an issue, and getting all students and staff tested each week continues to be an issue that we continue to talk about. So.
Evan, you have
But I think it's Miss Amy has that data.
Yeah, she shared
Yeah.
on Tuesday. Then
Well,
it's
I wasn't
6:03,
there.
I think.
Okay, thank you. I will just go watch.
Evan, yeah.
And moving forward, Evan was so nice to cover me while I was gone on that 17th, 15th Friday morning meeting. So, but I'm gonna go back and Evan's gonna step down and we're looking for a replacement for that. I also attended the CTU safety committee meeting last night, second time just to refresh. So I feel confident that our safety committee is a strong one, compared to some other things that I was hearing in the district. So, you know, we're getting familiar with the agreement and we're looking for a replacement for Mr. Tratt on the committee.
I got a question for you.
Uh-oh.
question for you. I think you mentioned something about cleanliness and stuff being an issue. Do you want to elaborate on that? And then like, if there's anything that we can do or that can be done?
So one of the parts of the agreement is when an issue is brought up in the safety committee, the administration has 48 hours to respond. And there have been times where there is a district union escalation that sends an email to Airmark, it sends an email to facilities. So we've done that a few times. Ms. Munoz and Ms. Zimi and Ms. Gimicello are, on top of it as much as it can be, as they can be. The times I think that we found the biggest issues have been when our custodians take time off and they don't send a sub, or if they do send a sub, the sub doesn't do as good of a job as our typical custodians. I mean, I think our building is much cleaner than most, so I think we're very fortunate, but there's always room for improvement. The same thing happens with any safety issue. We have escalated the testing, lack of testing, to the district-wide safety committee a few times now, because at this point we're 16 weeks into the school year and we should be able to get every kid tested and every staff member tested who wants to be tested every single week. So we're also starting to do that on a more regular basis. And it's not anything from our admin, it's just, letting the district know that this is not happening and this is what we agreed to, so. Yeah.
It's accountability. That's what I look at it, because our admin is very much on top of it, but this is put into protocol for accountability, so.
Great. And I appreciate you following up, especially on the testing, since I know that's been a priority of the parents. So that the safety committee is following up is appreciated. Any further discussion on this item of the agenda?
One of the general feedback or direct feedback that we got over the past couple of days was when Lori shared the numbers of staff vaccination status. We didn't know what it was, and I mean, being 96% or something like that was something that was, I mean, the feedback was somewhat of a relief, because we just didn't know.
It's a mandate.
Right.
In CPS, unless you have.
Yeah, exemptions and whatnot. Yeah. So, but that was a welcome figure.
Okay, seeing no further discussion, we can move on to the next item.
I do want to address though, Claire, if you weren't there on Tuesday, that data is available. Just reach out to Ms. Amy and that we do have that all. Bill, I just don't know off the top of my head.
Miss Amy, can you hear me? Okay, I think I asked this when we were muted for a second, and I don't know that you have this off the top of your head, but I missed the meeting on Tuesday and I haven't looked at the notes yet. And I was wondering if you knew the percentage of students who are currently being tested on a weekly basis at Peirce?
Shannon actually has that. Can you share, Shannon?
Yeah, so just to start off with, per the CPS agreement with CTU, they have said that they commit to testing the same level of students as they had in December. We have been escalating this to the district prior to the December break, that we did need additional testers. So we were ahead of that curve. However, we have 691 people registered to test. 82 of those are staff members. 609 of them are students. 78 of them are pre-K students at both locations. And on Tuesday of this week, while it was not an ideal situation, we had a rescheduled date. We are normally on Mondays, and due to the holiday, they were able to get one tester to our building as a makeup. They were able to test 304 students, which is 50% of our population and 63% of the staff. The staff is a different number because some staff are signed up and elect to not to test every week. Also noting that we have a fair amount of students on flip to remote quarantine, but knowing that we weren't able to get to 100% of the students in the building, but that is not an expectation currently put out by CPS. However, it is something that is important to us as Peirce. So we are still advocating for additional testers and longer hours, which we have been given for this coming Monday. So fingers crossed that everyone shows up.
Thank you. Can I just add that the numbers that you gave are who they're supposed to be, but the more important thing is realistically who is actually when the testers come, right? Like who is getting tested, because what percentage is not. So we need to keep that on the top of our minds. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I didn't follow up with that. Any other questions or discussion? Okay. In that case, I will go ahead and move on to the next item on the agenda, which is discussion and vote on approval of selection committee for the equity committee. So at November's LSC meeting, we voted on an equity committee. At the beginning of December, Aisha, Principal Zami, and I met with Dr. Fisher to discuss what that process would look like and the way to proceed with that in an equitable way. And what she recommended to us and provided supporting resources for was that we should appoint a selection committee made up of members of the LSC and a member of the administration to put out a call for people who are interested in joining the equity committee. They would interview them and grade is not the right word, but grade them on score on their ability to serve on the equity committee. And then that selection committee would choose the equity committee members based off of who they interviewed, and then it would come back to the LSC to discuss and vote on the members of the equity committee. Based off of Dr. Fisher's recommendation, I wanted to propose a selection committee made up of Mr. Lee, and this is open for discussion, and if anyone wants to, obviously. So made up of Mr. Lee, Matthew, and Aisha, and if any other LSC member wants to join the selection committee. And I also wanted, and if any parent, so that's 2 parents and a member of the administration, and we want to leave in the possibility for a 3rd LSC member to join from the community reps or staff and teachers. And if any parent wants to make a case for being on the selection committee over Matthew or Aisha, they're free to do so. And Dr. Fisher provided us with questions that we can ask that the selection committee can refine for what works for them and Peirce.
So how many people need to be in that selection committee?
I think Dr. Fisher recommended it not having too big of a committee because of yeah. So I'm more concerned about OMA, that we can only have 3 members of the LSC on there. So I just wanted to leave that 3rd potential spot open for discussion. I want to, before opening it up to the rest of the council, I wanted to ask Aisha or Principal Zami if I left anything out that was relevant for this discussion. As far as the timetable goes, we've been in contact with Dr. Fisher, and they would, once the equity committee is selected and approved by the LSC, they would do some training with Dr. Fisher. And the time that they have slated for that is the end of February. So we have one meeting before the end of February on the 17th. So hopefully we can vote on the equity committee on that date. But Principal Amy has said that we can have a special meeting with a lot more notice than our last special meetings if needed. But hopefully we won't need to. Okay, with that, I will open discussion up to the rest of the LSC.
So you said that because of OMA, we want to keep it at 3 or below, or?
Yeah, 3 or below.
But that includes Lori?
It won't, the selection committee won't include Lori. It'll include Mr. Lee.
And he's not part of the 3?
I don't
Because
think he's,
LSC. Got it. Got it.
sorry.
Slow down. Okay.
Presumably, any LSC member who might want to be on the subcommittee should not be on the selection committee, right?
That is a good point, but Dick Cheney did set the precedent to being on the VP selection committee, and then
I just didn't, I mean, like, it's fine if that's what we decide. But
If you want-
I just wanted to put that out there.
yes, that is a fair consideration.
So that was going to be my question. As you were in,
I would say for me, it's not, I don't want to, it's a capacity thing. Yeah.
I have the same issue, but less so than her. So I don't mind being on the selection committee and then end up being on the actual committee. But I do not want to be the reason why one of the other members of the council don't get to be part of that, because I think it's important to have as broad a representation as possible.
I can't remember, did we have a breakdown of what the eventual selection committee would be made up of? Well, it's not just LSC members, right? It's parents, I assume teachers, I can't remember.
So that's not the selection committee, that's the actual committee.
Yeah, so the A committee of the LSC can be made up of LSC members and non-LSC members.
So it'll be an LSC committee that will have LSC members, right?
Yes,
But
not exclusively.
And then after 4 months, it's gonna change with the LC report,
Oh, it's-
right?
That'll be up to the incoming LSC. So if yeah.
Right, but if only 3 can be on it, 3 LSC members can be on it, right? So will it get bigger? Like, let's say we're all not on LSC next year, we're on the committee, then the committee can grow. Or if you're on the LSC, then you've already, are we gonna redo it to give the equity of like people on the new LSC commission if you want to be on?
That'll be, I still think that'll be up to the incoming LSC to decide how they want to proceed with that. There might be people who want to roll off of the equity committee. So I think, I'm not sure that's a consideration for us at this moment.
So then it does beg the question, like, are there LSC members who want to be on the equity committee because they should not be on the selection committee?
Right.
But, like,
Unless they want to follow Dick Cheney's example.
well, in this case, at least Aisha said no, thank you, or can't, for the actual equity.
I'm curious, are we concerned about a conflict of interest?
I just want to make sure that we have interested LSC members for the equity committee itself.
Yeah.
Okay.
We don't put ourselves on the selection committee.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not interested in being, or I don't think I should be on the equity committee, so I could be on the selection committee to help create a spot for somebody who does want to be on the actual equity committee. But if we have enough of both, then I would.
Okay, that's a fair consideration.
I don't want to force anybody's hand to sort of declare that they're interested right now. But
Right.
it does feel like something we should consider.
Right. Good point.
Matthew, you did say that you were interested in being on the equity committee, right?
That's right. That's right. So that's why, I'm siding with Bill here, trying to make sure that I play this properly,
And
right?
to be clear, you want to be on the equity committee to keep Matthew off of. Okay.
Byron, any thoughts there on the selection versus being on the actual committee in the end?
Are you asking about my preference or?
Just thoughts in general.
No other questions.
Do you have a preference whether you want to be on the equity committee, Byron? Or if you want to be on the selection committee?
I'd be interested. I think what I need to know is more the timeline, which maybe we can talk offline about that. But yeah, I want to know the timeline for the incoming LSC versus tenure of the equity committee and how those line up.
Okay.
All right.
I guess I'm comfortable with, except I'd like to drop Dick Cheney from the whole reference. I'm comfortable with selection committee members putting themselves into the process for an election.
I'm comfortable with that also. So,
I don't have a strong preference either way. I just wanted to ask the question. It felt like it sounds
it's a good question, and I would be
That's the
comfortable
question.
with, considering that the equity committee will have to have LSC members. I'm comfortable with that also. Any interest on the, on the non-parent reps on being on the selection committee? Just open to anybody on that side of the room.
Sorry, I don't have the capacity that I want to mention.
No, that's completely fair. You will notice that I did not volunteer myself to be on the selection committee.
I'm stepping back from a lot of things as well.
Okay.
Due to changes at home, so.
Gee, I wonder what changed.
The garbage. The selection committee interviews process for.
That's right.
And we don't need a third LSC member. I'm just wanted to give people an opportunity to join if they felt.
Yeah.
You'll do the selection?
I'll do selection.
All right.
Okay. So the final question is, are there any parent reps who want to be on the, or are we fine with Matthew staying on?
I
I'm
think
fine
you need
with
to be on the selection committee.
Huh?
I think she needs to be on the selection committee.
Aisha, selection? Yes. What about you? Selection, no selection?
I mean, if Sandy's gonna do it, then I don't need to be on it, do I?
Oh, yeah, well, I mean, we can have,
Oh,
No, you don't have to do it.
right.
no one's making you do anything.
No.
I'm saying, ideally, it would be a committee of 4. Or
Yeah,
did I not count?
yeah, but with, so it
Sam,
would
so it'll be a
be,
committee of 3.
yeah, yes.
Okay, so we got the 3, we're done. Oh, no, unless you wanna be on it. Okay.
Claire, would you like to be on the selection committee? Okay, then, so we've landed. Yeah. On who doesn't want, on who's forced to be on the selection committee. No, I know, no, that's fair. That's okay, that's completely fair. So I think where we're landing, if anyone wants to contradict me, is the selection committee of Mr. Lee, Sandra, and Aisha.
One more? No, that's it?
Okay.
All right.
So then, what would be the process of taking nominations for, how will people, we're trying to get a vote in the February meeting.
There's a form that Dr. Fisher provided. The selection committee will finalize the form. We'll ask Principal Zamy to publicize it. And then from there, we can schedule so it'll be up to the selection committee to finalize the questions and the forum and the timeline with the goal of getting it to the LSC by the next month's meeting. Okay. Any other discussion on the selection committee? In that case, I will move to approve a selection committee of Sandra, Aisha, and Mr. Lee.
I'll second it.
Okay. I will call the vote. All those in favor of the motion? I don't see Principal Zamy on the screen.
I'm wondering if I should abstain.
Okay. I
I'm
see
good
that.
with it. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Principal Zamy. All right. In that case, the motion passes. Next item on the agenda is public participation. Do we want to take any kind of break either before or after? Let's do public participation and then open up the question of the break after again. Seeing as there is nobody in person for public participation, if we can turn on chat and any member of the Peirce community who wants to join for public participation can type chat, stack in the chat. And I'll just give it a few minutes. Okay, I see Ro's hand is raised. So Ro, let me ask you to unmute if I can find you. And anyone else who wants to stack, please type stack in the chat.
Hi, can you hear me, Javi? This is actually Greg. Rohini and I were listening together.
Okay.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. My question was for Principal Zamy around the summary that you shared. Thank you for that summary about discipline and other some of the other things that you shared. Rohini and I were curious, particularly whether the administration is paying similar attention to identification of students for behavioral intervention services. And I think it's kind of a two-part question. The first question was just if you could share a little bit about what's the documentation or criteria that are used for identifying students for behavioral intervention supports. And then the second was just whether there's any tracking similar to what you shared about the incidence of identification of students for behavioral intervention by student characteristics such as their race, ethnicity, or IEP or English learner status. Thank you.
Yeah, we do track that data. And I want to make sure that I'm clarifying. When you're saying behavioral intervention, you're referring to our behavioral health team and students that are referred to the behavioral health team. Is that how you're referring? I'm gonna answer it as if that was how the question, like, we have a behavioral health team where student referrals are made to, and then we pair interventions to support students for individual counseling, group counseling, check in, check out, peer mentoring, small group, skill-based groups. And we do track that data as well. We have a tracker that shows what our annual student count is, the types of interventions that students are receiving, and when they are, when the intake happens and then when they exit.
Principal Zamy, Greg says, I was talking about support for behavioral issues like 504 plan.
So 504 plans, we have demographic data for 504 plans, but a 504 plan doesn't mean that there's a behavioral issue. So there may be a medical issue, there may be a student that requires modifications, maybe a student who has a diagnosis of ADHD that requires modifications to the daily instructional plan. We do have that data. We can share that data broken down by demographic if that's what folks would like to see.
Thank you so much, Principal Amy. I do think that could be helpful to share those data along with the ones that you were sharing. So thanks so much for the explanation. I really appreciate it.
Okay, the next person on stack is Robin.
Hi. First, thanks. I wanted to thank Principal Amy, admin, staff, and teachers who, anyone who's involved with the GSA student group. I heard a lot of positive feedback about that, and that's a great thing, a great resource for students, so thank you. And then a couple quick questions. One is around testing. A number of parents have surfaced that they are not receiving results. I don't think I've seen necessarily, and that's anecdotal, so not a point of fact, but that's why I'm asking the question. Is there a delay in results for this week? Because a lot of parents are describing that they have not yet received them. And then lastly, just a point of reminder is to post the minutes, the LSC minutes to the public site. There aren't any there since last school year, I think from May. So just wondering when those will get posted. Thanks.
I was tested on Tuesday and still haven't gotten results either. So I believe there is a definite delay. I was tested.
Yeah, that's a twofold answer for me currently. One of it is there is a slight delay, though they are packaged up into UPS boxes, which are picked up by a UPS courier and shipped to, I believe, Atlanta to process. I know that since the break, they have been a little bit backed up, and sometimes it is taking until the end of the week. However, if you are not receiving results at all, I encourage people, and they have been as well, to email me directly, and I can double check if your email address is entered correctly into the color site, just as a double check in case something was spelled wrong, or it's just an error that can be fixed easily. And yes, people are receiving results. They're pooled. The tests are pooled. So when they get loaded onto the truck, they go and pick them up from all the schools. So it may just be a processing issue at the actual facility.
Shannon, have you heard of people getting results this week from Tuesday's testing?
I have not heard yet that it is a problem. I know that Jerry just said that she hadn't. Nobody has reached out specifically to let me know that.
And I will follow up on the minutes. The next person on stack is Nicole.
Thanks for that question, Robin. So I've been asking Ms. Giamoncello, like everybody I know, if they've been getting results from Tuesday, because I've been keeping my daughter home until those results come in. So I've been asking folks and asking on the parents group on Facebook, and nobody has said they've gotten any results from Tuesday's testing. So I hope I'm wrong with that, but I've been asking around a lot and everybody's saying they haven't gotten any. I'm wondering, so my question is about, I understand what you're saying about kind of CPS is no longer promising 100% of opt-ins will get tested every week, at least for now. I heard the CEO say at a press conference that, he hopes to build to that, but at the moment that's not what they're promising. And I'm wondering if there's kind of anything we could do still to increase the amount of testing that's being done at our school. I guess that's kind of also for the security committee too, for Evan and Jerry. I know you're putting pressure on kind of your communication route to those decision makers. I'm wondering if as parents, there's anybody we can be calling or emailing about this. And then without kind of additional resources, I've heard of other schools like bringing in parents to help on those testing days. Parents who have all the, volunteer approvals and fingerprints and things to be in the building that are actually helping facilitate that day to get more testing done with fewer resources. And I'm wondering if that's something that we would be open to. Thank you.
Thank you for offering that. I think the issue that we're finding at Peirce isn't so much like the process that we're using to test. It's making sure that we actually have enough people from Thermo Fisher in the building. So we're having the testers go around on a cart, which is a good method because they can quickly pull the students. You don't have to have students like waiting in the hallway for large periods of time. The issue has been that they've just not been sending enough testers to the building. I think when it comes to how can we increase testing sort of beyond our current resources, I know that Matthew had shared the free testing kit. So I think it's encouraging families to access the free testing that's out there, even if it's not within the district, which I know a lot of our families are doing, because the testing doesn't have to completely rely on what we're offering within the school system. The goal is that if we're having symptoms, we're getting tested. How do we access that? The school is very convenient, very easy when that system works the way that it should be working. But given the current circumstances, I think it's continuing to share where free testing is available. That's at-home test that kids can take home with them or whatever that might be.
And I would add, Ms. Jamie, that during the work stoppage, because the testing was missed, we made kits available for staff to take home. And also we escalated on Tuesday because the testing was not going around on a cart. They were in one place, which was led to confusion about people bringing their classes down, or were they coming around, or vice versa. So to speak to Ms. Brannick, what you're saying, we have been working with admin, talking to them about it, and escalating via the CTU page as the testing protocol.
Okay. The next person on stack is Kathleen Hayes.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kathleen Hayes. I have a sixth grader, Henry, at Peirce, and I have two questions for Principal Amy. My first question is regarding Dr. Fisher's work with the staff. I wonder if you could name a couple of desired outcomes of that work. And then my other question is, it's about the discipline data that you presented, which I think it's phenomenal that we are disaggregating data like that by ethnicity and race. I think it's critical. And I just wonder two things about that. Have teachers seen that data? And if not, what is the plan for that? And then does that data review by staff and faculty, does that intersect with Dr. Fisher's work with them?
Yeah, so the first question in regards to desired outcomes in our work with Dr. Fisher, Dr. Fisher's model is developing capacity, right? That we have the ability to lead equity work with what we have. It's giving us some tools to help us think about where we're at and like the things that we need to establish goals on. So one of the things is getting staff members to identify where inequity exists and having the ability to say, this isn't right. We want to do something about it, and that we have the power to change a system, a structure in our classroom at a very small scale or something much larger. So I think that's one of the things that we would like to see is staff members identifying where issues of equity exist and wanting to engage in action to change that. The other one is to really focus on what the data has given to us through her staff assessment. So there was an assessment that she, a survey, I should say, that she gave to the staff. And then there's a review that has come from it that we are still looking through and has not yet been shared with the staff. And so creating an action plan based on things that the staff are identifying as issues and establishing goals for things that we can do in the short term and then in the long term. So that's another another desired outcome is not just like the personal development and awareness, but also what are we doing on a much broader school-wide scale to move the needle. When we're looking at the discipline data, so we met with the PPLC in December, which is the teacher led committee led by Evan and Jerry, along with other teachers in the building. And we looked at discipline data, my voice, my school data, student achievement data in that meeting. And then the goal was that when we returned from break, that second conversation would happen. But because of the work stoppage, that conversation has been delayed, and we're going to have that conversation next week during our January 28th PD day, so that staff members can dig into some of the data that I've shared here at the local school council meeting and start thinking about making the connections with the work that we're doing with Dr. Fisher, along with the student performance data that we see. Where do we like identify, oh my goodness, yes, I have been over referring my Black boys. Like that's something I need to be very conscious of the next time that I'm making that referral. What, like, is this my own personal bias that's gotten in the way, or like what sort of like impeding the work that's leading to that referral to happen. So that's the work that we wanted to have happen January 3rd, and we've now moved it to January 28th.
Thank you.
Sorry, Principals Amy and Byron, did you hear what we said about a break? Oh, I'm sorry. The LSC at the school is going to take a 5-minute break to use the bathroom and stretch it a little bit. We'll be back in 5 minutes. Sorry about the confusion over the meeting. All right, we are all back here in person. Principals Amy and Byron.
I'm here. Thank you.
Okay. All right, then we will go ahead and proceed with the meeting. The next item on the agenda is committee reports. Is there anyone from the Bilingual Advisory Committee on the meeting? I do know that they had to cancel their back meeting from earlier in the month. Yep. I am not seeing anybody.
Ms. Munoz, are you able to provide an update?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Are you able to provide an update on the BAC?
Yeah, so the only update that I'm able to provide is that, yes, the meeting actually was not even officially scheduled for January. But with a work stoppage, that was not able to be finalized. The plan, based on the last communication, is my understanding that it will be February 8th, but that is still not officially finalized either.
Okay, thank you. Next is the PPLC.
So the PPLC didn't meet this month due to the work stoppage. We canceled our meeting, but the previous times that we met, we looked at the data that Ms. Singh shared this evening as a teacher leadership committee.
Okay, thank you. Is there any update from the Principal Evaluation Committee?
I don't think anyone is chairing it officially, but looking at the timeline we had last year, I don't know if folks heard me, I indicated that we don't have a chair for principal evaluation, but looking at our timeline from last year, it was about February, I think, that we started at least discussing the surveys for staff. The teacher reps managed that, and then for parents that went out to the community. So I think we want to keep that in mind with spring break coming up in April and the disruptions with shut down classrooms and all of that stuff. So that'll be something for the committee to start working on. I'm not sure who would be willing to kind of step up to help kind of manage that process. I don't have capacity to do that by myself. But
you can discuss that offline.
Yes, that's the update.
Okay. Any updates from the Safety and Security Committee?
The update, so we were not able to meet this month. We have been meeting on a monthly basis, prior to that, going over some of the discipline data, some of the concerns about some of the facilities. Asterisk here is that the slide is still not fixed, but so we're continuing to follow up on that. We will be meeting next month prior to the LSC meeting.
And just a follow-up question about the slide, that has to do more with
delivery. It's just apparent, it is very possible that the piece that's missing or the part that's missing is sitting somewhere in Long Beach.
Sorry, we are having some slight technical situation here.
Does it?
Okay, sorry, we had an issue with the TV that was pretty funny. Okay, next item is the Bylaws Committee. Any updates from the Bylaws Committee?
No.
Okay, there can be no updates. That's
No
fine.
update.
Okay. Any updates from the Cleanliness Committee? Okay, that's fair, yeah. Any update from the LSC Communications Committee? No updates.
No,
I know on them, yeah. Okay, any other committee updates that we should cover? Okay, seeing none. The next item on the agenda is community group reports. Is there anyone from the Friends of Peirce on the call who can wants to update the LSC? I am not seeing anybody from the FOP raising their hand. Is there anyone from the peer service organization who wants to update the LSC?
I don't know if Jason is that a PSO?
Does someone chat or raise their hand?
Or no, just somebody that needs to be admitted, but I didn't know if that was a parent doing a report.
Okay, seeing none, no one from PSO who's raising their hand. Is there anyone? So next item is the Racial Equity Parents Group. Is there anyone from REP who wants to update the LSC? Can you please raise your hand?
Nicole and Kat.
Yeah, I will ask Nicole to unmute.
Thank you. So we've got two updates. So if you can unmute Kathleen as well, I'll throw it to her after my update. But I would like to invite everyone to a Peirce event that we're hosting next week that's called Preserving Educational Opportunity and Affordable Housing Workshop. This event is co-hosted with REP and BAC and will take place at 7:30 p.m. on Thursday, January 27th. You should have an invite with an RSVP link in your room rep email, and you'll also get more information about this and another RSVP link in Ms. Zamie's next weekly email to the Peirce community. At that event, we'll be welcoming guest speakers from the Chicago Department of Housing, from a community organization called One Northside, and from Gowdy Elementary. We're going to be exploring the intersection of affordable housing and public education. We're going to discuss what affordable housing means, how it impacts our communities and our schools, what our neighbors are doing to advocate for more affordable housing, where you can find rental assistance to stay in your home, and why the Red Line renovation project makes this conversation as timely as ever. And since we are having three great speakers, I just wanted to take a minute to share a little bit about our speakers. Cindy Soto is coming. She's the Managing Deputy Commissioner for the Department of Housing. She co-led the Department of Housing's Racial Equity Impact Assessment. She's implemented a language access plan to expand outreach for the department, and she's led efforts to recommit the Department of Housing to fair housing practices. She's also an advisor to high-profile decision makers in government and in the nonprofit sector, with an emphasis on housing, immigration, and healthcare. She also was appointed by Governor Pritzker to serve on the governing commission for the Logan Square, Avondale, and Hermosa Expanded Mental Health Services Program. So we're excited to have Cindy Soto with us next week. We're also going to have Chris White, who's a leading housing organizer for One Northside. The one in One Northside stands for Organizing Neighborhoods for Equality. The organization builds collective power to eliminate injustice through bold and innovative community organizing. And also, in a small world coincidence, Chris is also happens to be married to somebody we're working with in the Next Steps program that Kathleen will talk about in a moment. Just a total coincidence there. And then our third guest speaker is Nick Ward. He's one of the community representatives on the Gowdy Local School Council. Ed Gowdy, he established a housing and enrollment committee to study the effects of housing on enrollment at Gowdy. So we really hope that you can all join us for this event. Thank you for your time, and I want to hand it over to Kathleen Hayes.
Thanks, Nicole. I just want to brief all of you on some anti-racism training that some of us from REP are engaging in. As Nicole mentioned, 6 of us from REP were selected by Next Steps Evanston for their annual anti-racism learning studio, as they call it. And it runs January through April. We just had our first session this past week. And this current cohort is sort of cycle 2 of REP's engagement with Next Steps. Next Steps has primarily in the past worked with District 65 Evanston schools, but I think they're weaving in Chicago schools here and there as well. And so another cohort went through this training last year. So what the experience consists of briefly is learning sessions and then application of that new knowledge sessions where we have a lot of time to work with our cohort. And we ultimately focus on, we identify and focus on a harmful practice or system in the school and collaborate with each other on a plan to work with the larger Peirce community on strategy for ending that harm. And we are also assigned a coach by Next Steps who guides us through both team building and all the messy, complex work that comes with anti-racism work. And so the cohort is me, Leanne Seawright, Chad Curry, Bianca Ramirez, Christina Woods, and Melanie Berlin. And the cohort was selected from among active REP members. And then if anybody has questions, we are happy to talk offline because we want to limit our time tonight with you. Thank you.
Sorry, Kathleen, you said Bianca Ramirez. Did you mean Bianca Jimenez? I will.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Yes, I did.
Okay,
and I apologize to Bianca. I'm sorry, Bianca. I think she's here. I'm sorry about that. I'm getting last names wrong a lot today.
Okay. I'm going to give one more opportunity to either FOP or PSO to update the LSC before moving on to the next item on the agenda. If you are on the call and would like to update the LSC, just raise your hand. I'm just going to give it 30 seconds. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands raised, so I'm going to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is public participation. Once again, nobody is here in person, so if you would like to participate in public participation, please type stack into the chat.
Javier, can I answer a question that I just got an answer to from earlier?
Yes.
With the results of COVID testing, I was just able to look at the dashboard. 4 of them were processed today. The rest of them say processing. So no one, I would say 360 people have not received their results yet. They are still processing in the facility.
Thank you, Shannon. We appreciate you updating us in real time. Okay, can we give it 30 more seconds? Not seeing. Oh, okay.
It looks like Nicole is trying to raise her hand.
Yes, I see that. Let me try to get to her. Sorry, I'm not used to working on a Chromebook, so.
I think chat is disabled too, by the way, still.
Oh, okay, thank you.
And then I just wanted to ask, is there any chance of our test from Tuesday expiring? I know that was a issue over break with the tests that were stuck in the mail and then were invalid.
I'm seeing that they're in the facility and being processed.
So that's a good sign. Okay, thank you.
I see chat now. Thank you, Nicole, for calling that out. Mr. Lee says chat is open now. If you would like to address the LSC, please type staff. Okay, I'm not seeing anybody stacking, so I feel comfortable with moving on. The next item on the agenda is norms, and this is a new item on the agenda coming out of our training with Dr. Fisher, and that's it's a norms check to see how we've done in this meeting. Did anyone notice any violation of norms? Does anybody want to speak to that? I would just like to say that it's so nice to be in the same room with everyone. I'm appreciating this a lot more than I thought I would.
Think ahead, glad to see it on the agenda.
And I'm just gonna, there was a comment from Jill Johnson who wrote it in chat, and I'll just read it out. Thank you all for being there, and the teacher is such a hard time to be a teacher right now. That's from Jill Johnson. Okay, next item on the agenda is other business. Does anyone have any other business that they would like to bring up? Okay. Seeing none, the next item is announcements. I have one. Does any the election for the next LSC is going to be in April. People have, members of the community have until March 22nd to submit their applications in person. And I just want to encourage as many people as possible to consider running for the LSC and to put their submit an application and be part of the discussion for the priorities for the next couple of years for our school. Any other announcements? Okay. Okay, next item on the agenda is motion to adjourn. Okay. Sorry. Motion brought forward by Jerry, seconded by Evan. All those in favor?
Okay.
All right. Motion passes. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.